Well, you can catch the new Van Gogh immersive experience until February 2022. Now, discussions on what it means to be a man in the 21st century is a popular topic, with phrases such as man up being deemed as toxic and outdated. The landscape of what it means to be a man is changing.
But what about single men with children? How does society view them? Photographer Harry Borden decided to find out and recently published his book, Single Dad.
Harry Borden is an honorary fellow of the Royal Photographic Society and father of four. Borden's photography has been featured in many of the world's foremost publications, including The New Yorker and Vogue.
He snapped for the likes of Britpop band Blur and politicians such as Margaret Thatcher. In Single Dad, Harry explores the notion of single-parent fatherhood and what it means to be a man in the modern age. We're lucky enough to have him in the studio right now. Harry, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Yeah, great stuff.
Amazing.
Well, look, thank you so much for coming in. Of course, your most recent book, Single Dad, it captures the intimate photos of single-parent fathers alongside their stories of love, loss, and I guess the healing power of family. What was your inspiration behind the whole book?
Well, like most of my sort of projects over the last 15 years, I sort of got to the point where I'd spent the first 20 years sort of being commissioned by magazines. So you're kind of like a cork that's being tossed around in the sea. So it's fun. So you can suddenly be photographing Margaret Thatcher or whatever, but you're not really in control of your destiny. So I started to do projects that in parallel with those commissions that were meaningful to me. The first book I did was portraits of Holocaust survivors, because my dad was a Jew and an atheist, so it was kind of an exploration of my identity. And then following that, my role as a father, I think it came out of the my wife and I breaking up, and I realised that the thing that was sort of really at the core of everything, all my concerns really, was my children and my role as a father and how that would impact on them, perhaps having a corrosive effect on their sort of mental health somewhere down the line. And I kind of, then I was asked by a charity called Dad's House that sort of basically look after single parent dads, or dads that are kind of wanting to be involved in their children's lives after relationships have broken down. They asked if I'd, in my role as a celebrity portrait photographer, they asked if I'd give away a portrait session. And I sort of actually mulled that over and then said, actually, maybe we could do a project where I sort of photograph single parent dads.
That's where it all came from. Yeah, incredible.
Amazing. And in an interview with The Guardian, you said that during making Single Dad, it was kind of a delve into your own childhood in a way, and it was kind of making you think about the relationship you had with your own father and kind of going into those emotions and seeing how it could maybe relate to others. Do you think that your relationship with your father during kind of making the book made you really think about how you wanted to be as a father yourself?
Well, I think my dad, for various reasons, didn't have kind of appropriate parental instincts, So I don't think he was really that interested in being a dad. He wasn't really involved with my brother, sister, and I. And that was kind of really my idea of normal until I grew up and had my children myself. And then I realised that it seemed strange not to be kind of hugging your children and telling them you love them all the time. It came very naturally to me. And so it was thrown into sharp relief when we'd go and visit him, and he'd sort of be on the TV, sitting on the sofa, sort of turning the volume up, kind of ignoring his grandchildren. Sometimes watching an interview about somebody talking about their grandchildren and getting emotional about that, but ignoring his own grandchildren. Wow. Which I remember one incident that happened. I mean, being a dad was really kind of absolutely at the core of who I am. I mean, it's nice to sort of be successful and have material success and be regarded to have status, but ultimately if your children don't really like you or you're never around, then what is the point? I mean, without wishing to sound sort of like a born-again Christian, I mean, I'm not a religious person, but I mean, really, there isn't really anything else in a Darwinian sense other than the next generation,
Sure, yeah. And I'm certain that almost all of the single parent fathers that you sort of spoke to and interviewed and got all their stories. You connected with all of them, but was there one in specific or a couple that you really resonated with?
I mean, there were people that I had, you know, there was one guy, Neil Young, he is a very beautiful man. He's from New Zealand, and his children are really beautiful. In fact, you can see him there. And I mean, I connected with him because what he wrote was, when I've given sort of talks and stuff, it's actually very difficult to actually read through the entirety of what he wrote, because each dad, I got them to write about how they became a single parent dad and what they loved about fatherhood. And it's very difficult to read what he wrote without actually welling up, because it's so beautifully written. So yeah, I connected with him. I didn't have to change his contribution at all. But I mean, all of them. I mean, when I sort of got the book published, I sort of ensured that it was a collaboration and they were kind of really involved in the process.
They're such beautiful photos as well. Like, just looking at that, it's so natural. It feels just like you've kind of walked in on them just living their life and doing whatever they do as, you know, father and children. And on the cover here of the book, you can see this photo as well. And they just look so unposed. Is it the same kind of technique you use with, say, celebrities or public figures, or is it a completely different process, like equipment-wise, and how you pose the photos?
Well, it was a bit of a departure, because I'm quite an early adopter of technology, and so I sort of went digital sort of as soon as it was possible to do so, because it seemed like a natural. You can't really fight this wave of technology that's coming. I remember going and giving a talk at Falmouth University, and I sort of said to the students there that if a really important part of what you do, I mean, all the hipsters using film cameras and everything, and I said, you know, if a big part of what you do is the fact that you're using a soon-to-be redundant technology, you need to question what it is you're doing, because it isn't really, the technique is really secondary to what you have to say. And so you have to think about what you're trying to say and how you feel about a subject. And so, but having said all that, partly because I wanted to kind of reference the photo album, which we don't really have anymore because we take all our pictures on our phones. Sure. I actually did shoot this on an old film camera called a Hasselblad, which is the camera that I used to use when I was sort of starting, you know, in the early 90s. I wouldn't do it again, but it does give the pictures a sort of a visual consistency, and sort of there's a sort of visual fingerprint that ties them all together.
Amazing.
And what about Kit Ram? I heard there's what's the story here?
Well, Kit was one of the nice things about, you mentioned The Guardian. I worked for The Guardian. It used to be called The Guardian Weekend, the Saturday magazine, and they quite often, when you have this working relationship with picture editors, they'll be invested in your projects, and they'll kind of help you if they can. And The Guardian were doing an article about men, you know, a bit like Cristiano Ronaldo, I think, or maybe Elton John might be a better example, where they wanted to sort of use surrogacy in order to become a dad. I mean, Elton John's got David Furnish, but, you know, Kit Ram was in a relationship with another man, and he really wanted to be a dad. He'd always wanted to be a dad, and he basically, his partner just thought that was for what straight people did, and he didn't want to be a father or anything. So he finished the relationship, he sold his business, and he invested the money in paying a surrogate and having a baby. And I'm good friends with all these dads on social media, and you see that he's a great dad. I mean, that child is no longer a baby.
So many of these stories as well. I wish we could just talk to you all afternoon, to be honest.
I wish we had forever.
Thank you so much as well. I'm looking forward to some upcoming projects as well that you've got going on. Real quick, have you got a little tease, anything that we can expect next?
Yes, I'm doing, the next book is actually about divorce.
Okay.
Wow.
And it's going to be published on the School of Life, which is a sort of platform, social media platform on YouTube.
Amazing.
Wow.
Well, look, I can't wait for it.
Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. Well, look, I think it is time that we take a short break now, but do stay with us, because coming up, we've got a performance that, I'm going to be honest, I 100% think that you are not going to want to miss it.
Definitely not. See you in 2.